how can we expect to do that without thinking outside of a Sunday or the traditional methods that we've looked at?
Well, hello, welcome, Highway Kids team, to our very first team podcast. I'm here with Danica.
Yeah, I'm here. You didn't tell me you were going to come to me.
Yeah, because it's not just a visual version, it's also like an auditory version. So
Yes,
people,
it is.
they're just imagining me at the moment. Now they're also imagining you.
Yeah.
And yeah, today, the point of this podcast is to get you guys to join in with the conversations that we've been having. Mm-hmm. If you don't know, me and Danica are constantly talking about kids ministry, constantly talking about Highway Kids and how we can make it better, all the different things, like how we want to reach families better. And we have these conversations all the time. I feel like most of our phone calls go for at least an hour.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
Once we get started on kids ministry, it doesn't stop.
It doesn't stop. So we just want to bring you guys in on the conversation because I feel like where we're going as a kids ministry is so exciting. And some of these new things we've been working on for a while now, just in the behind the scenes and in the hours of phone calls, I feel like is a really cool direction. And we're now finally ready to start bringing you all in on the conversation, which is really cool.
Share it with the team and see where we go from there.
So where did this all start? It was 90 something. No, where this all started, I feel like it's been a journey of we talked about the 24/7 kids ministry.
Yeah.
So if you don't know, we want to create the 24/7 kids ministry at Highway Kids, not just building things for kids on a Sunday, but building kids through the midweek so they can be disciples of Jesus each and every single day.
Absolutely.
And we talked about how we want to reach kids. To do that, we want to encourage kids each and every single day. Mm-hmm. We've talked about that over the last few years, but I feel like we've started to be this year has been a real almost reset and figuring out okay, what does it really look like? What does it structurally look like? What does it systemly just everything. And I feel like we've been to a few things this year, hey?
And just seems to be a common theme of discipleship in children and how do we actually facilitate that? What does it look like for kids to actually become disciples of Jesus rather than just showing up to a Sunday or, the various things that we do, but to actually have them have a personal relationship with Jesus and grow in him? And how can we more effectively facilitate that?
Yeah, I feel like I was saying this earlier, and I feel like we've gotten really good at doing Sundays.
Yeah,
we've gotten really good. And even I think team, we show up, we do Sundays well, but do we disciple kids really well? Do we disciple families? Do we equip families with what they need to disciple their kids? So it's been a really great project. I went to the Kids Pastors Roundtable event at the start of this year. And that was all about discipleship. And then we went to the state day, the ACC Kids State Day, and it's more of just we get it. I even went to a Zoom seminar thing for E21 last week, and once again, guest speaker comes in, it's great, I'm going to talk about discipleship in children. It's okay, right, awesome, great, sick. I am so sick of hearing this, but it is so good because that's where I feel like when you hear the same thing over and over again, it's obviously God speaking to us and being this is the heart for what we need to do. And I was reading this kids ministry book. It was written back in the 90s. And a key line that stood out to me was your kids aren't going to just keep coming back because it's fun.
Yeah. They're
going to come back because they're strong disciples and they're actually engaging with God like they've never engaged before. They're not just receiving, but they're actually outworking into their world too. So all that to say, that has been our sort of journey this year.
Yep.
And it's been really challenging, but I feel like we've gotten a really cool framework for how we're going to move forward. Yep. And so today we're going to talk about our ministry discipleship life cycle, which is a long, wordy name.
To basically talk about how we take children from the beginning of their journey with Jesus through to discipling, to evangelizing.
Till death.
Well, hopefully they continue, with Jesus for the rest of their life. So really, it works.
So we're going to go through it bit by bit. There are 4 stages on this journey. But before we do that, I feel like I want to define... I've got 2 scriptures that I feel like is really good to define what we want a disciple to look like. This is what I feel like me and Laura worked on a lot last year when we talked about kids curriculum and what we want it to be like. And we wanted to look like, what is a young disciple? So I got these two scriptures. One is from 1 Timothy 4, verse 12. And it says, "Do not let anyone think less of you because you are young, but be an example to all believers in what you say, in the way you live, in your love, your faith, and your purity." I just think it's a great verse. And I think that's a great definition of young. And you can be a young disciple. Our kids can be young disciples. And then I think the quintessential verse on discipleship is Matthew 28, verse 19 to 20. "Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I have given you." So that's a great commission. So it's like kids can be young and they can be disciples and they can go out and make disciples too. And I think that's a cool just framing of what do we see? When we think about the 10-year-old, the 11-year-old, the 12-year-old that's finishing at kids, what do we want them to be when we hand them over to our youth ministry? Is kids that are just on fire for God, going out and making disciples, going into their school, their sports clubs and everything, and actually being Jesus in their world. So, yeah. All right, let's get into the main meat, the life cycle. Here we go. If you're watching this, it's going to be on the screen as well, which is going to help.
Yep.
But if you're not watching it, just visualize a big circle.
The life cycle of a tree, essentially.
Life cycle of a tree. I mean, that's great.
Pull it up yourself.
Pull it up yourself. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, in your brain. Pull it up. Brain, If you're driving, don't do that. But number one. Do you want to say number one?
Mm-hmm. Number one, the beginning part is bring in.
Bring in.
Yeah. So what does bring in mean, Brendan?
Bring in, it is the analogy or the picture we're using is a seed. Yeah. So bringing in, this is all about essentially bringing in people into the church community for the very first time in many different ways. If that's coming into a physical location on a Sunday, if that's online watching a video of ours for the very first time, it's bringing in. It's a very first part of the process of bringing people in. I like the analogy of the seed because for the seed to grow, you need to plant the seed, and that's where we'll get to eventually. But I think bringing in, these are the practical programs and things that we do that bring in people into the church community for the very first time.
Yep.
And what are some ways that we've done this in the past?
Yeah, I think obviously anything that introduces people new to Jesus or to the church community. So any of those events that we do, date nights have been really, really successful in terms of, a lot of people from the community coming in, holiday adventures, different things like this where we're bringing people in from the community who might not typically be in church or are a part of our church community, but they're getting introduced to either Jesus or the church for the first time. And those are sort of the people that are being brought into that seed sort of stage, I think.
I think a great story of this, a practical story of this, is so last date night that we had a family that came for the very first time. Saw it on Facebook, also had some relatives in church here at Highway, and they came to the date night. Their kids had so much fun at the date night. The parents loved just having a date night. Yeah. And then picked their kids up, and then their kids just raved about how much they loved it. And then forced their parents to come back to church the next day for the very first time. Never been to church before. Yeah. And then the parents gave their lives to Jesus in the service. And the kids just loved it again. And then they have just been consistently being in church. And they come almost every week, right? Yeah. And it's like... It's
incredible.
That's a great story. It's like of a family's lives has been turned around. It's a turnaround moment.
Yeah.
But it wouldn't have happened without a bring-in type thing.
Yeah, and something that you might not anticipate or think is going to have that impact. Sometimes we think that we're just doing events or we're just, we're just looking after kids or having fun, making videos, whatever it is. But these are really pivotal things that actually, bring Jesus into people's worlds without them having to, sometimes it's confronting to turn up to a church service or they're not at that stage yet, but to have these opportunities for them to experience, Jesus through us and have an opportunity to kind of, dip their foot in, step in without that intimate, sort of,
I feel like what I love in particular about like the date night example is I love that event because it's so selflessly Like, it's just like, here, have a date night. Like, it's so, like, we're not trying to manipulate, we're just trying to build loyalty. I think that's what's so key about the bring in stage, is that when we're bringing in seeds, like, it's such a critical time. Like, it's so easy to, like, grab a seed in your hand and, like, crush it. Like, if you do it wrong. And to bring in the seed and then plant it correctly and to nurture that process is so important. So I think that when we can be as selfless as possible and just serving people like Jesus served people, then that's just so key. But yeah, it's really cool. So that's the first part. So then bring the seed. Did you have anything you want to add to bringing the seed?
No, I think that sums it up. Makes sense.
Because then as we go around the circle of the life cycle, so how you then take it to the next stage. So the next stage is build up, which is like the sapling. But before we get there, I feel like the journey, the little arrow between the two, is nurturing the seed. So it's the path from bring in to build up. I think nurturing is such an important part of this. It's like it's actually planting of the seed into a community. Yeah.
And as you said, that has to be done well and, stewarded well for these people who are first coming in.
And I think this one's a bit hard to articulate because it's a lot of things. Like, this is a lot of 1%ers. Like, I think this is like, sometimes this is down to culture. Like, how do you feel when you walk into a place? How do you feel when that mum who's dropping their 1-year-old off for the very first time into that kids' room, how do they feel when they're dropping their kids off? Because they can make a decision if they're coming back before they've even completed one service. Yes. Like, this is the check-in desk that's running smoothly and it's just humming because, like, and that gives reassurance that the rest of the kids program is going to be great. Like, these are like the little 1% along the journey that it's like, oh, they nurture, they care about us here.
Us remembering them as they walk in or knowing, their children and they're, connecting them with friendships, those sorts of things that really make a difference as to whether people will turn up once or continue, turning up. Yeah,
I feel like I remember when the Makotta family came for the very first time. I actually remember their second week more than I remember their first week. I don't really remember their first week, but I remember the second week because all 5 kids just ran. I mean, no, they only had 4 at the time. I don't think Elisha was born at that stage. But the whole family just came in, they ran in, and then the parents just wandered in and they were almost dragging themselves in. And I was like, hey, how you doing? They're like, yeah, good. I was like, oh, our kids loved it last week. And they came from a very different traditional background. Yes. And our church was just so almost foreign in a lot of ways. But just to see that their kids had loved it so much, they had met friends, they had connected in, they had loved coming to church, that they dragged their parents back the next week, even though they were like, oh, okay. I think these are the nurturing little things of even being able to have those conversations with the parents and be and they got nurtured in as well.
And you can see the incredible impact that has had. I mean, they're
one of the most amazing families
in our church. And from those little moments that brought those kids back and the people who nurtured the parents has a lasting impact.
Yeah. So, that's the nurturing side. Now we're going to build up. And this is build up. So this is the sapling stage of so you've planted it, we've protected it, we've nurtured it. So it's grown and it's growing out of the soil. It's got some roots in. This is the pastoring stage.
Yeah. This is a stage that us and a lot of churches do well. I feel like pastoring is, we have pastors. That's what we do. It's kind of job title done.
We did it.
But it is really, because a lot of it does take place on our Sundays.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously a key thing that's really easy and effective for us to be doing. If those Sundays are great, we have a really good foundation for pastoring these kids well. So it is something that I think that we've probably put a lot of focus on in the past, which is incredible. But yeah, it's definitely, I feel like one of those key parts of the cycle that we've done well. And now we're looking at how we, do other parts of it. But
yeah, I feel this is the one where when I was writing through, and it's this is the one that's become almost we do this. This is second nature. This is we teach Bible. We, make friends. We you're trying to say we do
kids
the
get
things.
Connected. They, They're learning about God. They're,
Yeah.
you know, being able to be introduced to Him. All of these areas are things that we do quite effectively.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I feel like this is like, it's pretty self-explanatory, but we build up. Like the whole process of kids ministry is like we're building up. We're building up on a Sunday. With like I said, like kids are coming out with a biblical foundation. I feel like the best way of putting this is like a plant. Like this is where you're feeding the plant, you're watering the plant almost every day. You're making sure it's getting enough sun, but not too much sun. Like, you know, we're doing the things that are like protecting it. I think this is where the next stage where we'll get to is so important, which I'd say we're really good at feeding kids, but for kids to go out and then go into their world and even in their home life to unpack the word. So, but a lot of things practically fall into this category, mostly Sunday services, but even things like date nights fall into these too. A lot of things fall into the build-up category because it's just building up people. And it's what we've been good at. It's what we've been building as a church for almost 30 years now. Like, and globally the church for ages. So there's a story for me. We just had kids camp. Kids camp's a great build-up example because I think kids camp, it's not as much bring in, but it's like the kids that we have, we're going to build them up pastorally. We're going to give them an experience to encounter God. So there's this kid that was like, he was being that kid at the camp. He was being annoying, disrespectful, whatever words you want to put to it. And I think I was worried, he was having a rough few days. It was day 2, the afternoon of day 2. And it's like, it's those moments where you got to choose to either send him home or like we got to have some sort of break. So he's been misbehaving, and we sat next to the campfire afternoon, and I was like, you know, I was frustrated, but I was like, God, like, what does this kid need? And I just felt like to ask him, like, why, like, what's going on with you and God? Because I noticed in the sessions you just don't want to engage at all. What's going on with you and God? And he just looked at me. And he just started crying, and he just opened up about what's happening at home. It's like, if God was real, then this stuff at home wouldn't be happening. And just starts breaking down crying. And it's like, that is a moment where we can pastor a kid through something. And the kids that sometimes look like they're the kids that, you know, they can be the most problem, like, they're like, oh my gosh.
What do they say? Kids who need the most love ask in the most unloving ways.
You
know, that's the times.
And there's a moment where you could sit down and you could actually work through some things. And, like, I don't know what the rest of his camp experience was. He was well behaved for me from that point. I'm not sure if he was for everyone else, but because we built that relationship.
That was
and I
a
think
moment and something connected you.
Where we as a team can go even deeper into build up is that we can get so personal with these kids, as in like we can make them feel so loved, so known. And I think this is the area I want every kid, and we'll talk about this in probably the next podcast, but I want every kid to have a friend. Every kid needs to have a friend. Every kid needs to have a friend in a leader and a friend in a kid, you know. So we can pastor, and we can continue to pastor better as well. And everyone's responsible, not just the kid's pastor, but every single person.
It's about walking the journey with every single kid. So as every kid who comes in, or family who comes past, you know, comes into our rooms, what do they as an individual need from us? And I think that's really key. It's about like listening to God and just being able to ask in those moments, you know, what do they need from us? You know, how can we effectively, you know, pastor these children and these families in that moment? It's really
that's cool. All right, on to the next one. Next one's the big one. This is the big one.
This is the one we've been getting smashed with for the last little while.
This one
is great.
It's great. It's good. I'm loving it. But it is like, because I will just say, and we'll get to that. But the third one is called Train Up. And this is the tree. Well, so essentially, we've gone from sapling and we've grown up into a tree.
This is where they get their strength, where they get the, you know what I mean? What's
going to actually
sustain them for their life and as a disciple of Jesus.
Yeah. I like that trees know how to get their own nutrients. They know how to get fed themselves. You know, they're not reliant on someone else to come along.
That's
it.
They're past that stage. They're
not going to get pushed over.
And they're not going anywhere. That's the stage that we want to see our kids, especially by the time they leave our ministry, to be able to do, especially in those teenage years, is huge.
if we can set them up to be strong during the teenage years, man, like the generation that will come through is incredible.
Yes.
So, but this is the area. It's funny how like we all agree with the things that we just said, but we have not been doing anything really to push into the train up category. So
I think because it's a challenging thing because we only got an hour on a Sunday, and when we look at things through the lens of a Sunday, it's really easy to get stuck in that pastoral stage because that's what we can do in that amount of time. But it really does take opening your eyes up to this idea of a 24/7 kids ministry to actually look at how we can disciple and how we can give them that, because it takes depth, and it also takes, I think one of the things we've talked a lot about is that not every kid's going to be at that stage and going to be ready for that. You know, Sundays are quite across the board. We try to cater to a lot of children, but I think we always get stuck on this discipleship because it's like, how do I get every kid at every stage to give them what they need? But it's not about that. We're kind of like looking at through this, the lens of this 24/7 is like, there are kids who are going to be at that stage. There are going to be families who are really wanting to disciple their children and to raise them in this. And so that's where we need to put our focus.
Yes. And it's like, I feel like that, like you said, the kids are at such different levels and different spaces, and so that's why I feel like really equipping parents, and that's just going to be our philosophy as well. Like, it's like we're not going to take our hands off completely. We've got a whole bunch of different things that we can do as well, but the best people to disciple kids are parents. Yeah,
they are the the
that's
key
God's
people
plan.
in their lives.
Like,
that's they're their children's first teachers and leaders, and that's what God wants for families.
It's like the idea for family came from God. Like, he's designed us, and like the story of family throughout the Bible is just so consistent. And it's like, we want to create strong families.
Yes, which I think is also like a story because it is a little bit countercultural right now.
Yes.
Because it seems to be a lot more that we're, handing off. It's like that job of, you teach my child, and people have really been looking for someone else to do that or to do that job. And I think that's part of like reclaiming that idea of families within the church and, within the community of the idea that like family is where it's at. It's not, we can't do this on a Sunday or even through midweek programs. Like that's not, something that we can do. The parents are the people who are going to be the most useful in this. And if our job is to equip them, not to take their job,
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like when it comes to discipleship of kids, it's going to be, like you're saying, it's going to be different for each and every single child. But I don't think, and that's why I think in the past it's been like, oh, this is too hard to figure out. Or let's send an activity sheet home, and some kids are going to like, this is amazing. But some other people aren't. So I think practically, this is where it's like, we don't have many examples of what we've done in the past, because I think we have ideas for the future. And I think we've tried to do different things. Like, for example, I think in the past, I think we thought YouTube would be this, but I think YouTube's more in the bring-in category, and even in the build-up category. A type of YouTube can be a different type of YouTube, but we'd have to more cater it to this. But a lot of things. So these are the few of the things that we are doing Kids Bible Experience, which is great. And I think that's like a first example of us trying to get kids engaging with the Word each day. And then we are starting you guys are the first to hear about this. We are starting Kids Bible Experience plans as well. So they can do long form, not just a short devotional, but they can do a long form devotional too. So that's going to be really awesome to do those. But essentially what we're trying to build is what we're calling essentially the discipleship toolbox, which is like essentially so many analogies. We love our analogies, don't we? Like trees, toolboxes.
The whole thing.
But the toolbox is like, not every family is going to use just one type of tool. It's going to be different for different families.
And that's something I think we've talked a lot about. Like I can see in my own family, when I look at my parents, and they gave us like an incredible example in how I was raised, but that doesn't work for my family now. You know, there are things that I look at that I'm like, that's not going to be for me, you know, like sitting around a table, like we did so much of our discipleship, like sitting around a table, having dinner, you know, being able to have those conversations with my parents. But in our lifestyle, that just doesn't happen. So we're looking for like different ways, and that's how a lot of this conversation has come up, is what's really effective for me. In the car, I spend, you know, a lot of my time driving my kids around, and in the car is where we have our deepest conversations and our things. So that looks different. I can't pull out my Bible and you know, go through scriptures with my kids in a traditional way, but how can I do that? And I think a lot of that, this discipleship toolbox, is the idea of a different tool is going to work for different people, and if we can provide them with a range of opportunities and a range of tools that they can use, we can hopefully hit as many families as we can.
And I feel like different phases of life, like kids will gravitate towards different things. We really want to hit different rhythms throughout the day. So some families, it's like when you first wake up. Some families, it's the drive to school. Some families, it's going to be like around a dinner table. Some people might, you know, it might be around a dinner table. It might be prayers before bedtime. Like there are different rhythms.
Because that's the way that it's going to be something that sticks, you know, because that's essentially what we as mature Christians are doing in our life. It's about, you know, every part of our life being walking with God. So it's, you know, the prayer on the way to work, or the, you know what I mean? When you're cooking dinner, like all these different things. So if we can build that in our kids and our families, that's going to be the thing that actually continues, you know. It's might not be sitting down for an hour doing something, you know, like that might not be practical in life, but if they can put it into their daily rhythms and into, you know, utilize the time that they have, because we are incredibly time poor as a generation. So how can they put in things that are going to stick and going to last them?
I love what Andy Kirk says about like when parents ask him like how much should we do devotions, and also his answer is more. And I think that's great.
Whatever you're doing.
Well, whatever that looks like, do more. Like if you're doing nothing at the moment, reading the Bible like once a week with your kids, that's going to be something. So I think so. I just like that as a kids team and where we're moving is that like to know that like we're a part of something bigger. We're a part of pastoring kids on a Sunday, yes, but we want to be equipping families, creating resources and curating resources that parents can use to equip their kids. So practically, we want to see kids growing. I even see, like, I know this sounds, we're not just doing it for this, but sometimes I'm like, I want to see, like, actual behavior change in the kid, you know, like go from a kid that struggles with stuff to a kid that's actually overcoming things. Like, I really am passionate about seeing that too. So we talked a lot about this stage, but this stage I think is the one that's really been gripping us recently. And I think, to be honest, as kids ministries in the past, we've almost been incomplete of like, we've been doing stage 1, stage 2, and then
we just go around and around. We're missing.
But if we incorporate stage 3 and 4, I think
and without doing stage 3, we never get to stage 4.
Yeah,
which is really, really important and kind of the way that we keep this going. Like,
100%.
It's the most critical part.
It's the most critical part.
It is the Great Commission. That's the one thing we're given, and we're not getting there as well as we could because we're not hitting the discipleship stage for kids.
I like that Jesus took his disciples and pretty much did train up.
Yeah.
Like, his bring in was, hey, come follow me. Yep. His build up was pretty much eating.
Well, and all probably the way that he spoke to crowds and those sorts of things, like all of that was a pastoral sense of making sure they know the word and what's happening. But it was that intentional time with the disciples, and that's essentially what it is. It's just walking with people in life, and it's like how can we expect to do that without thinking outside of a Sunday or the traditional methods that we've looked at.
Yeah. I love John Mark Comer. He's got a phrase. He's like, he doesn't use the word discipling. He uses the word apprenticing under Jesus. Yeah. And I love that idea because it's like, it gives more of a clear picture of like, okay, well, if we want kids to be apprenticing under Jesus, like that's an everyday journey. Yeah. That's I'm like, oh, I'm a disciple on Sunday, like, you know. Yeah.
So, and it's also a season of like, you're not an apprentice forever. Like we're getting to a stage where you will, as the tree, be able to source these things for yourself. You'll be able to, you know, put your strength in God without it having to be, you know, someone hand feeding you anymore. Like that's the idea of a mature Christian, is that we're actually have those disciplines and that relationship with God to, you know, do all these things for ourselves.
Part 4. I feel like we've danced around it, but part 4 is send out. Send out. And I think the picture of this is tree in a harvest. So not just a tree, but a tree that's producing fruit. What I love about fruit, I mean, you hate fruit.
Yeah. I love about the concept.
I love about the concept of fruit. But what I love about fruit is that there's seeds in it.
Yes.
And I like that analogy of like anything that's fruitful for God has seeds of more people coming in, and that's
to reproduce and continue
that's what completes the cycle. Yeah, like you're saying, like so. I when I was writing this, like writing about this, I actually feel like this is the section that got me so excited. Because it's like, this is what I haven't seen in kids ministry and what I desperately want to see in our families. I feel like it's all about equipping and empowering kids in their spaces.
Yes.
So we'll still do things to help make this happen. This is essentially going, hey, kids, go into your home, go into your school, go into your sports clubs, and go be Jesus.
Yeah, and because the kid is going to be a far better evangelist in their spaces than we could ever be. Yeah. And we talk about that, especially the way that the world's going today. Us as adults, as leaders, there's a lot of spaces we're not allowed in anymore, you know what I mean? Or a lot of things that we can't do. Whereas kids have the ability to, obviously on a peer level, you know, have influence in their spaces with other children in a way that we just won't ever. And they have that childlike faith, that ability. Like it's so, and I've seen it so many times over the years, like how incredible it can be once they catch a hold of this, because they don't get held back by things that we do typically as adults, you know what I mean? They don't overthink these things. They're just, being Jesus in their spaces and sharing Jesus. And it is truly one of the best things to see, and where we're going to see the biggest impact.
Because I feel like these kids that like, so we're not running a school program in every school at the moment, like as in, and hopefully maybe one day we will, but we have a kid in every school. We have a kid in every school in our region that can bring the gospel to that school.
Jesus has an opportunity in every school to be known.
And I think if we're going to run school programs, it would be to encourage those kids to help them. Like I had ideas of like, imagine if kids were running Bible studies, prayer groups, like what if they were running like different things in there, like kids were running that, kids were driving that, like I love that in like primary school. This is what we're setting up kids that like they're actually ready. So by the time they actually get to high school, they're going to be so ready to like take on high school and all the challenges that come with that. Because they got that experience from doing it in primary school.
And to be the light that is so desperately needed in those, you know, in that area, in their high schools, like the things that teenagers are going through these days. Imagine if all of the kids that we've had come through our ministry can then go out and, you know, share Jesus in these spaces and those, you know, incredible, like difficult times that teenagers are going through, you know, and you can see that with youth ministry and how great that is. Imagine if kids are coming into that age with all of these things already in them, and that drive and that desire to reach people for Jesus.
Yeah. I don't want to get like, I don't want to get like political. I'm not going to get political. But what I will say is that the world is coming after our kids.
Yeah.
Like this is a strategy, these 4 steps, this is a life cycle and a strategy that, to be honest, this very strategy is probably being used but to convince kids of other things. Yeah. And we want to just give kids the truth. We want to give kids life. There's life in Jesus and everything He's taught us. And I really, truly believe in what God has is the best way. Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like if we're sending out kids into their world to make such a huge difference, then we're going to see such drastic changes in our schools, in our communities, in our families.
And I think that's the key of kids ministry, is that the gospel is for kids as well, and everything that, you know, has been spoken over people is for kids as well. You know, it's not something they have to wait until they get to a certain age for, you know, and quite often I think we limit God in what He can do in kids' lives because we think, you know, got to wait until they get to a certain age or they can't, you know what I mean? And it's the idea of taking them through this lifestyle of ministry is that all of these things can happen before they hit 12. You know what I mean? And they
Yeah,
can
yeah.
be done well, and
Yeah.
Jesus can, bring out all of these things in them
Yeah.
at that, when you started as a young disciple, you know what I mean? In that
Yeah.
verse in Timothy, that's what was intended for our young people.
That can be the example. I love
Yeah.
that. Like, and to wrap this all up, because this has been like, there's a lot of information, we understand, but this is just where we feel like God's calling us to.
Yeah.
And in the next episode, we are going to go through the practical ramifications of all this. Because to do these sort of things, we've got to let a few things die.
Yeah.
We've got to
Refocus our
and
priorities
and really go after, because I really do believe that God is on this.
yeah. And then, go after what's in this season. There's seasons for everything. And like we said, there's things that we've done really well in the past and in different seasons. Whereas, we can hear God speaking to us throughout this last 6 months, however long, about that this is what's for this season for our ministry. And if we can get down to those practical things and see what are some of those priorities going to be to really make this work.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say this to the team member that's like, maybe you're like, I serve once a month, or maybe I serve and I have like only 5 kids in my room, or, like we don't have enough team to even run, a proper service, like whatever that looks like. I just want to encourage you, like, I think the point of this conversation is to get our eyes above where we are right now and to dream into what God has called us to do. And then in the next episode, we're going to take it back down and be like, okay, on the lowest of low things.
Yes, these are some very simple things of what it actually looks like,
Because I know that we got different contexts, we have different sizes of kids ministry between like Olmo and Gilston, even like,
different
like
rooms,
and
different age groups. It looks different everywhere.
what it looks like online, what it looks like, so I understand it can be like, it's daunting, like, what does this even apply to me?
Another thing, or but it's not. It's just refocusing. And if we can look at these priorities, it breaks it down in things that can be used in every space, every room, every context.
Yeah. And that's why, like, yes, this applies to you. It's like, and it applies to you because God is going to do something so significant in our kids, in our families. And I really just want to encourage you. We'll get to it again, but let's be praying. Let's be praying for God to do something really significant amongst us and to be ready, because I am honestly so excited, because I feel like something that we've been talking about for years, we actually have language around, we have a system around, and it's going to be great.
Yeah.
I think that's
exciting.
I think that's good. I think that's
probably enough to start with.
I'll do. Chew on that for a bit. 38 minutes. I don't know how much we did at the start that we're not going to include. Sign up on our Patreon and you get the start.
bonus content.
Bonus episode. It's nothing. We were just warming up.
You really want an insight into our conversations and what goes on inside our head? Probably not.
But I'm going to do a final recap. So number 1 is bring in.
Yes.
So it's bringing in the people, bringing in the families, bringing in the kids, the things that we do to bring in people. Number 2 is build up, the things that we're doing to pastor kids, the things that we're coming in, we're pastoring kids, the things we've done really well for a long time. Number 3 is train up, the big one. I think the missing step at the moment between where we want to be and where we are right now. So training up, using discipleship at home with families, using discipleship techniques, building the discipleship toolbox. And then number 4, which is the result of the first 3, is then sent out and influencing the world that these kids are going to be in. So I'm so excited. Yeah,
it's going to be great.
Any last wisdom?
Jenny. No, I used it all up on the
Used it. All right. Well, we love you guys so much, and so excited for what God is doing amongst us. Serve with everything you have, because this next generation is for Jesus. All right. See ya.
Hi.
I'm doing a peace sign for anyone listening.
Audio listeners.
Audio listeners, I did a peace sign.
A very awkward one.
Okay.